Why not to buy a Jeep Compass, even though they look cool? They're cool looking vehicles. There's no arguing that. They got a nice look to them. Now this particular one is a 2017, so it's 3 years after Fiat has taken over Chrysler. And as far as I'm concerned, that's 3 years into the Jeeps being made cheaper and cheaper. They are not lightweight vehicles. But if you look under the hood, it's only got a little 4-cylinder engine. And you couple that with an automatic transmission, you gotta get that engine spinning pretty fast, high RPMs, before it starts getting any decent acceleration. But even though it's a small engine, you can see down here, there's not much working room. You gotta work on these things, they're still pretty hard to work on. They put it in transversely and there's not that much working room. Now this is an all-wheel drive vehicle, as you can see when we go under. It's got drive going to the rear and drive going to the front wheels. But as you can also see here, it's not that high above the ground. So even though it's a Jeep 4-wheel drive, it's not really a serious off-road vehicle. It's not high up in the ground. It's more of an SUV with 4-wheel drive. As you can tell, it's got front doors and back doors, so it's pretty much SUV styled. It has a kind of smallish, below average room in the back seat, and it's got a trunk that's a smallish size. The Toyota Matrix my wife has has got a lot more space than this trunk has, and it's got a low slung luggage carrier on the top, but it's so small there really isn't all that much that you could hook up there. This is a high-end one, so it has video display, navigation camera, HID headlights, and leather seats, a Sirius radio, moonroof, and superficially it looks like a good vehicle, but it's made by Fiat Chrysler, and there's where the problem lies. If you want a long-term, reliable SUV, this is not the vehicle for you. Customer of mine that bought them invariably had problems. Some bought them new and had problems from the get-go with electronics, with transmission failure, right from brand new. Others bought them second-hand and saved a whole bunch of money. There's no arguing that. I've seen people buy them when they have 25,000 miles on them and they pay well under 50% of the original sticker price, but there's a reason for that. The quality just is not there. Now, even though this only has a 4-cylinder engine, it's still pretty much a gas hog. In town, this car gets about 18 to 19 miles a gallon because it's heavy and that's 4-wheel drive. But at the same time, it doesn't have that great acceleration. I've seen V6 engines that get better gas mileage than this, that have much more horsepower. And let's face it, the modern Jeeps are nothing like the old Willys. These things aren't going to last forever. You might get a Toyota Matrix that's about this size. They might last you 300,000-400,000 miles easy. These things, you're lucky if you ever get anything over 100,000 miles out of them. The Compasses, they were basically made because they wanted to cash in on the Jeep name and make a small SUV that they can sell. But that is such a cramped market with such great vehicles already there. A wise person, they'd think twice before they'd plop their money down for one of these things. Just understand, for that price, you're getting a lot lower quality too. I mean, if you want to get something, you always want to have a Jeep, and you're driving 4,000 or 5,000 miles a year, hey, it might last a few years. But the Fiat technology that's put into these things, not known for longevity in the least. These things, as I said, they don't have the acceleration, and this is the bigger engine. This is the 2.4. They make a 2-liter that's even slower, and with all the weight that it's pulling around with the 4x4 system, it just is not a zippy vehicle to drive around, and at the same time it gets pretty crappy gas mileage. So you're really not getting the best of either world. It isn't particularly fast, and it doesn't get good gas mileage. It kind of makes me wonder what their engineering design was behind this thing. Other than just another one of Fiat Chrysler's idea of, oh, let's make something that looks cute, see if we can rush it out and sell it to people. Now, they are selling a reasonable amount. The first ones that they made, they only sold 60,000 of them, but 2018, they sold 160,000 of them. So they're banking on a Jeep name. It's paid them back some dividends. They're selling them. But really, the quality isn't there if you're looking for a long-term, small SUV that you can drive without having a lot of expensive repairs as they age. And believe me, the transmission repairs on these things, they're expensive And they're also common as the vehicles get older. And when you look under the hood, you can see low quality. Look, here's the top. You can see that's all corroding. We'll go to the back. Look how all these nuts and bolts are all rusted and corroded. And that's on a vehicle that only has 30,000 miles. It could use better made metal. Could have better coatings on it. There's no arguing that. It's a big reason I'd never advise one of my customers to buy one of these if they really value their money over time. Now, when you take in consideration all the Italian designs and even actual Italian parts that they're starting to use in these Jeeps, the quality is nothing like they were back in the 50s or 60s or even the 70s. As the saying goes, what's in a name? In this case, the name Jeep often works to sell things to people. Selling over 160,000 of them last year. It seems to be working. Let's say you bought a loaded 2018 four-wheel drive. You're talking about $29,000. And if you are comparing that to an all-wheel drive Toyota RAV4 the same year, that thing's about $38,000. So this thing's almost $10,000 cheaper than a Toyota. And yes, it is a cheaper made vehicle. There's no arguing that, which is one of the reasons that they can sell them. Price matters a lot. But if you're looking for long-term reliability, low cost of upkeeping it, maintaining it, I'd stay far away from this Jeep Compass. Now, when this Maximo was new, it was a $28,000 car. Now it's a 2007. Even the books that generally inflate values say that this thing is worth anywhere from $1,700 to $3,300 today. Now, my customer bought this thing a year ago for $3,500. And the first thing he said to me was, yeah, I wish I would have bought a Toyota instead. To which I responded, yeah, but you're not going to get much of a Toyota for $3,500. I mean, check this car out. It's a nice looking car. Still got a great paint job. White reflects heat, holds up over time. The wheels are still good. Nice lines to it. There's no bashes or anything. It is a nice looking car. But alas, looks can be deceiving. And they often are in older Nissan. I tell people, you want to buy one, buy a new one. Keep it 100,000 miles, you might not have any problems at all. But this baby, now that it's got some mileage on it, got 152,719 miles. And guess what? It's showing its age. It needs quite a bit of work. Now in this case, this baby has 3 catalytic converters and they're going out. It is typical on Nissans. And I've often had people buy the cheaper aftermarket catalytic converters and they still fail the test. If you have to buy 3 cats for this car and you buy OEM factory cats, that's more money than the car's worth. It runs decently most of the time, especially after you put some cat cleaner in the tank. In order to get it legally passed in an inspection, if you live in an area that has emissions inspecting, you'd have to replace those cats, and man, that is one expensive job, and it's typical. They almost always go bad on these Nissan V6 engines when they get mileage like this one. It has like 150 on it. Almost invariably, they're going to go bad. Now, once in a while, they get too clogged up and it really runs bad. When you put the cleaner in, it cleans it out. So let's say you lived in a place like Montana where they don't inspect cars for emissions. You could just keep adding cleaner, you know, and live with that. But if you live in a place where they inspect cars for emissions, especially California, you wouldn't want to touch this car with a 10-foot pole. And you might have noticed I got AC gauges hooked up because the AC system is leaking. That's the reason the guy brought the car in the first place, because it's hot here in Houston, and he wanted to see what's wrong with the AC. I'm going to fill it up, put some dye in, look for big leaks. If I don't find any, just tell him, just keep filling the stupid thing up. Because as it's running, you can hear the compressor rattling a little. You know, at some point, the compressor itself's going to go out. That's a lot of money on one of these. Now, if you don't have to have AC, you don't care. But here in Houston, that's important. Hence, they have extremely low resale value when they're this old. Now as we look inside, hey, the interior is still in excellent shape. That's how they sell these things. They're comfortable, they handle great, they got a nice Nissan engine and a good suspension system. And as we check the back, a lot of room in the back seat and a decent trunk. There's some good room in here for stuff. Notice the jumper cables. And as I said, V6 engine, it's very reliable. This one puts out 255 horsepower. Not insane horsepower, but back in 2007, that was still a decent amount, and it's a very zippy car. The problem is, at this age, these things just tend to fall apart. They look great, but it's all a facade. The owner says he's got a clunk on the left front. Let's jack it up, see what's going on there. Find a good jack point. There's one, and up we go. So first we'll look inside. We can see it's wet in here, so the strut's starting to wear. And I can see and feel a ridge, kind of a scalloped ridge. A worn strut can do that, as can worn front end parts. And when I wiggle this back and forth, I can feel there's some play in the power steering rack. So that means the very expensive power steering rack is worn. Eventually that'll need replacing. Again, a brand new one, that'll be more than the car's actually worth. Although that is something you can live with. It's not too bad yet. It's not going clunka. I've had customers drive them years that way. They would just buy new front tires, maybe every 15,000 miles because they wear out too fast. And as long as they didn't clunk when you pulled on it, you hit a big bump, you hear a clunk up there, they would just live with that. Do not expect perfection if you buy one of these things used with this kind of mileage on it. So let's put it down, take it for a spin. Now, as we can see in the door here, this is a Nissan. It's a Japanese car, but if you notice here, it says manufactured by Nissan Motor Company. This one was actually put together in Tennessee. So let's start it up. It starts right up. Most Japanese cars will. Now, you do have to say it's a pretty quiet car, but if you listen, you can hear the power steering groaning because that's a little worn. On your arc, it's set, go. It's still got some decent acceleration. That's how they sell these things in the first place. They're fast, they're fun to drive, but as they age like this one, they become endless money pits if you want perfection. Now, in the past, finding oil leaks was a really messy, pain in the rear end job. You'd find the oily area, and in this case it's the whole front of the engine. It's all oily here. Then you'd have to clean it off with degreaser. An absolutely no fun job. Let it dry, then drive the car and see where the new leaks are coming from. Not a fun process. I'm lazy. I don't want to do all that work. I don't like cleaning anyways. I hate cleaning stuff. I'm not even going to clean it off to find this leak because, thanks to the miracle of fluorescent dye, I just put a little bit of this oil into the engine oil and let it run for 10-15 minutes. Since this is engine oil, we'll go to the oil cap, take it off, and pour a little UV oil in. Whee! You don't need much. Then we start her up and let it run for 10-15 minutes. Plus, if it's a really slow leak, take it on a highway. Get it going 60 for 10-15 minutes. Then bring it back and you'll be able to see that dye. And to make it easier to see, you put on these yellow glasses, ultraviolet lights. This is a multi-function light. This is the ultraviolet ones here, kind of blue tinted stuff. Now here's how it works. I spilled a little bit of the dye here. When I get the yellow sunglasses and put them in front of the camera here, it's now a cool camera with shades. Now you see everything's tinted yellow, and when we shine it on, you can see this stuff glowing. As you can see now, you can see that little green glow there. See, you can see it glowing where the dye comes out. So you look for that green. Then you put the yellow glasses back on your head and get the ultraviolet light and start looking around to see where the green's coming from. And in this case, it's not good news. It's leaking from the head gaskets and the main crank seal. It's throwing oil all over the place from the middle of the engine where the head gasket is and from the seal on the crankshaft. Now, in the case of this car, it's a 14-year-old Mercedes V8. So the beginning of the endless money pit scenario Mercedes has already begun. Customer isn't planning on keeping the car all that long. Taking apart the engine, rebuilding it, replacing all the seals in the head gaskets. She's not going to spend those thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to fix where the leak's coming from. We know where it's coming from now. I'm going to put all this AT205 reseal. It can rejuvenate seals. It's worth a try. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just a polymer. There's no solid particles. So you just pour it in the engine oil. Take the cap off, in goes the whole bottle. Then you run the engine to circulate it. Now, the advantage of using this UV fluorescent dye is obvious. You don't have to clean up the other stuff. The wind's going to blow oil back when you're going forwards. gravity's going to pull it down. It can go all over the place. With the dye, you can follow the green up to where it starts and know exactly what's leaking. Now granted, it's not one size fits all. There's ultraviolet dye for engine oil, for transmission oil, for power steering oil. There's a special one you can put in the cooling system. It's different than this one, but they make it for cooling systems. So you can put it in the cooling system if you have a leak. They even make an ultraviolet dye you can stick in a gas tank, because gasoline leaks can sometimes be really hard to find. You can smell them, but you can't see them. You'll be able to see them when you put ultraviolet fluorescent dye in. Wherever it's leaking, you're going to see the green coming out. Personally, I always hated looking for oil leaks, because the process of cleaning them all off was a pain in the butt. Then trying to decide, okay, here's some drips, but where are they coming from? Now, you know immediately whether it's something that you want to fix, something you want to live with, or something that says, time to say goodbye to this car. You use an ultraviolet fluorescent dye in any of your oil systems, and you'll know exactly where the leak's coming from. And as my father taught me years ago when I was learning how to fix cars in a corner Texaco gas station, don't stop when you find the first leak. There can be numerous leaks, because in the past, if you saw an obvious oil leak coming out, it's squirting out, okay, you fix it and think that's it. There could be a lot of other hidden leaks. This is going to find all the leaks so you can make a real diagnosis of where all the oil is coming from, and not keep coming back saying, well, we missed that one, there's another one, la la la. Because correct diagnosis of a problem is one of the most important things when it comes to fixing cars. And if using something as simple as a little fluorescent dye and a few minutes of looking around can find the problem, I say, thank goodness somebody invented this stuff. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.